I'm an addict. My name is Roseanne. And I'm from southern Utah. I am just so filled with emotion right now. I'll just share with you how I'm feeling this moment, because this is the moment that we have. I feel very special. I am so grateful to be clean. And I am so grateful to Narcotics Anonymous. When you hear my story, you'll be grateful too. From all the things I've done and all the places I've been, and you know where the disease of addiction takes us, I should really be dead right now. I'm way ahead of the game, way ahead of the game. And, you know, I feel so much gratitude right now. Because I didn't do anything special to get here. I was an addict just like we all are. And I believe those of us that are sitting here tonight are the chosen. For whatever reason, there's still people out there ripping and running and doing their thing and dying and using and dying and jails, institutions, and death. And here we sit, so blessed, you know. And for all that, I'm grateful. And I'm grateful all of you are here. I just, you know, when I was hearing the readings, because I don't understand the language, but it didn't matter. You know, I felt the love in everybody's heart. And this is a very strange, unusual situation for me to be in Norway. This is my first time in Norway, and I love it. And I said to a couple, yes, thank you. Gonna take my sweater off because it's time to go to work and quit looking good. I said to someone earlier, I said, you know what, I really love Norway. I mean, 6 weeks of vacation a year, you know. And I said, you know, if I could find a man here, I probably would stay. It's just a joke. It's just a joke, you know. I remember one time sharing about being single or something, and somebody came up to me after the meeting. This guy said, boy, you were really pitching for a man, weren't you? So I'm not pitching for a man. I'm single but very happy. Anyway, it's a gift. It's a gift for me to be here tonight to share my experience, strength, and hope. I'm nobody special. I'm not any better than any of you, and I'm not any worse. We're all the same. You know, and the theme, I love the theme of the convention, we can. You can't, you can't, you can't, you can't, you can't, you can't, but together we can. And I love the theme of the convention. I have never done anything in Narcotics Anonymous by myself. It's always been with the power greater than myself and with all of us addicts, you know. I want to thank the committee for inviting me to come here. It's definitely been an honor since I arrived. And Doug and his lovely wife, Mate, have been so wonderful to me. She and I hung out today, you know. He asked me, do you want to drive with me to the convention or her? I said, her. I mean, you know, of course, you know, women with women, men with men. But I do want to thank you so much. They've been wonderful hosts and hostess to me. I feel like family. And many of you that I met last night, I saw again today, and I feel they're familiar faces already, you know. And my lovely new friend that interpreted for me last night when Jill spoke, it was phenomenal. We both were crying like at the same time, so she wasn't even worried about, you know, telling me what was being said, because we were crying and then we'd catch up. And you know, and Jill, thank you, Jill, for sharing last night. Let's give Jill a hand. You too. Jill was wonderful last night, and I really could relate to a lot of the things that she said. I was right there with you, and I just want to thank you, you know, for being so honest, and there's so much I want to say. I'll tell you some important things. I'll get out of the way. My clean date is 10/21/81. my birthday, I was actually in Barcelona on my birthday, and it was August 19th, and I was celebrating my 70th year birthday. So we do recover at any age. I was 42 years old when I got here. I was hope to die dope fiend. I lived on the streets. And whenever I share, there's a couple of things that I always talk about. One thing that I want to share is when we had a moment of silence, I felt the power in this room. And it was really powerful. And I just ask that tonight when we circle up and pray, and in that moment of silence, to just feel. See if you can sense and feel the power in this room, because the power is definitely here. By ourselves, forget it. We can, absolutely. And one of the things I want to share is that if you're listening, and I know I learned early on that I needed to listen to hear the message, and I'll share a little bit about that. But I know for myself, if I'm listening, I'm going to hear something. No matter what meeting I go to, no matter who's speaking, if I'm really listening, paying attention, I'm going to hear something. And so I ask you tonight, for those of you that are listening, and if I say anything that connects with you. You know, when you're at a meeting and somebody shares and you say, oh yeah, you know, I really needed to hear that. Well, if you hear anything tonight and it clicks with you and it connects with you and it's something you really needed to hear, and sometimes you don't even know you need to hear it, but you hear it, that is not me. That is a power greater than ourselves working through me to you and for you, because I have no idea what any of you need to hear. I have no idea. If I knew, if I could read your mind, I'd be in Las Vegas right now doing a magic show or something, you know. But I've been to meetings and I hear exactly what I need to hear, and I think, how did they know I needed to hear that? You know, and I started to believe that it's a power greater than myself working through that person. There's a couple of things that I always share when I share, and for reasons, specific reasons. I don't talk about my drug using and how I used and who my connections were, because we all know that. We've been there, done that. But I do talk about some of my desperate, desperate times. And I do it for myself so I can remember where I came from. And I do it for the newcomer, to let you know that I know exactly what you're feeling, because I've been there. I felt hopeless and helpless and powerless when I got here. I was 42 years old, and I had been in and out of Narcotics Anonymous for 10 years. And when I got here this time, I thought, you know what? It's never, ever going to work for me, because something is seriously wrong with me. It never worked before. Why would it work now? And let me tell you, I had been in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out. So we should never, ever give up on the newcomer. That person that's going in and out and in and out and in and out. Because if they show up, this is what I believe. If they show up in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, there's that tiny bit inside of them that wants to live more than they want to die. Now, when I was a newcomer, I didn't know that. You know, I just knew I was suffering and I was hurting. But two of the things I talk about always is when I was 15, I got pregnant. I was hanging out with this guy, and we were bopping around in the back seat of his car. A little more than bopping. Just want to see if you guys are paying attention. So we were bopping around, and I got pregnant. And I remember going to Mondo and telling him I was pregnant. And he said, oh, it's not my baby. And I remember feeling, you know, rejected. And because I thought, oh, I'm going to have this baby. It's me and him. And it's going to be wonderful. And he was, you know, turning me away. So I went along my way like most addicts do. I was pretending I wasn't pregnant. I just thought maybe if I wore tight things and I didn't show and nobody knew, maybe I don't know what I thought. But I was in big time denial. And so I got bigger and bigger and I was hiding it. And I never went and told my mother. I just didn't feel like she would understand. And I remember one time I was 6.5 months pregnant. She came in my room and she asked me if I was pregnant. And I said yes. And I felt just a glimmer of hope, I guess, because I thought now it's going to be okay. And my mother said, I wish the ground would open up and take me. How could you do this to me? And that's why I never told her, because I knew that would happen. And there was so much pain in my life. And a couple weeks later, I was watching Elvis Presley debut on TV. And I had cramps. My mother called the doctor. Nobody knew. The neighbors never found out. My mother had gotten an attorney. We were going to give the baby up for adoption. Nobody ever asked me who the father was. Really didn't have a say-so. And so a couple weeks later, I went to the hospital. My mother called the doctor that I had seen once. And 20 minutes later, I had this baby. I had a daughter. And never had any hard labor, no hard pain. And I told myself, God really loves me. The neighbors never found out. I'm not in a lot of pain. And I started telling myself different things just so I could function one more day. And I remember them taking me out of the ward where you have babies, the maternity ward, and took me way off. And a few days later, a lawyer came in and I signed papers and they took the baby and I never saw her again. And I share that for a couple reasons, because that day when I had that baby, my arms literally ached to hold her. I loved her so much. I felt so much love in my heart that day and so much loss. And when I share this because it's part of my story. But I really pay attention when I share this now, because one time after meeting, this guy came up to me. And he said, Roseanne, thank you so much for sharing what you shared about your baby and how much you loved her. He said, because I've been adopted. And he said, and I always thought all my life that my mother gave me up because she didn't love me. And he said, I never felt worthy and I never felt loved. And he said, but when you said what you said, that you loved your daughter so much, he said, I think I felt a little of my mother's love. And he could look at it a different way, a different perspective. And so I always share that story. The other story I share is a story I share because I never, ever want to forget where I came from, ever. I believe the furthest I am away from my last, the closer I am to my next. I can never forget where I came from, and I can never forget that I'm an addict. And I had forgotten all about this, and I had about 6 years clean, and I have a sister that's my best friend in the whole world, and I love her so much, so much. And I lived on the streets. I lived on the streets of Watts. For those of you that don't know Watts, Watts is a ghetto in Los Angeles. And I lived on the streets for a year and a half. I lived nowhere, no address, no nothing, no job, And during that time, I just put one foot in front of the other, because it was the time, and I believe once an addict, always an addict. And everybody around me believed the same thing too. And I'd get busted, I'd go to jail, whatever, I'd kick right on the floor. There was no infirmaries, no detox, so, we have it good these days. I guess it's good. Yeah, it is good. So anyway, I lived on the streets for a year and a half. I was about 32. And my sister came looking for me. And what happened during this time is my sister used to come to the street. She knew the neighborhood I was in, and she'd come and she'd bring me food. And she used to take me home with her. And then her husband said, you are not bringing your sister home, because the next time you do, you're leaving with her. So she really couldn't take me home. I was always screwing up anyway when I went there. And but she used to come to the street looking for me and feed me. She used to bring me food. And so this one time, I was walking the streets like I walked, and there was this preacher man. And he said to me, you know what, I'd really like to help you. He said, but, I'm a preacher, I've got a congregation, I can't take you home with me. He said, but underneath my porch steps, he said, I have a place that you can stay for a while, and I'll bring you some food. And so what he did is he took me to Salvation Army, and he bought me some clothes, and I went to a gas station. I took the clothes I had on and threw them away and put the fresh clothes on, and I went to his house. And I stayed underneath his porch steps. There was dirt, but he brought me a blanket, and he brought me some food, sandwiches, whatever. I really don't know how long I stayed there. I probably stayed until I needed my drugs more than I could stay. But my sister found me there. And there was one time my sister and I had 6 years clean, and we were sitting having coffee. And she said to me, do you remember that time I came and got you and Watts, and you were underneath that porch step? And she said, I felt so bad. And when she started telling me, I thought, what is she talking about? And the more she started to tell me, the more I remembered. And I wanted to throw up because it was such a painful memory and time in my life. And the reason I share this is because I had forgotten it. And I thought, I don't ever, ever want to forget this again. I had learned my first year clean that I have a disease, the disease of addiction, and it sits right here. And it's always there. Just as vigilant as I am, my disease is. And I have to always remember that. So my sister started telling me this story, and as she told me, I started remembering. And I said to her, what did I look like? And she said, well, you were a little dirty, you weren't real clean. And she said your hair was like straight and matted to your head. And she said you had half a mouthful of teeth. Well, she told me recently I only had a couple of teeth in my mouth. Sure wasn't a half. She said, no, it was just a couple. So I had a couple of teeth in my mouth, and I had abscess sores all over my legs because I was using drugs and I couldn't do anything in my arms, so I went to my legs. And so I had these sores all over my legs, and I had them wrapped in gauze. I was trying to treat myself. And I remember her taking me to the drugstore, and we went to get some gauze pads, and she was trying to help me, heal these wounds. And today I have abscess scars, but I had sores. And I used to walk the streets like that. And that's where my disease of addiction took me. And I almost forgot. I did forget for 6 years. So I share that story because I don't ever, ever want to forget where I came from and where I'm going if I use again, and those were really suffering days for me, and every day, for a while I used to just pray and say, God, just please don't let me wake up tomorrow. It would have been better to die than go through what I was going through, but obviously my higher power had a plan, or I wouldn't be here today. So I always tell that story. I came into recovery in, let me see where I'm doing on time. Okay. I came into recovery in 1981, and, I've been to jail several times. This nice lady sitting here. Sometimes I surprise myself. I think, who said that? Oh, that's why I have to keep telling my story so I don't forget. But I've been to the penitentiary. Not a big deal. I remember getting to the penitentiary. It was in 1963, and I got out in 65. And I remember getting there, and these matrons, we called them matrons then, they would say to me, what's a nice girl like you doing here? And I couldn't wait to roll up my sleeves and show them my tracks and stuff and, be big and bad. And I really wasn't big and bad. I was never big and bad. I never went out with a big-time dealer, although I used to tell people when I got here that my old man dealt a lot of drugs and I helped him. And, it didn't happen. And then, towards the end of my using, I'd get busted, and, it was like no big deal. I get busted for disturbing the peace, and I would do it on purpose. I would be loud and screaming and yelling so the cops would come and bust me because I knew I was just going to go to the county jail, and I was just going to go for a couple of days disturbing the peace or whatever. But anything to be taken away from where I was at, because at that time I was getting beat up pretty much daily. I was getting raped on a regular basis. I remember one time getting stabbed, and I was walking, and I walked down alleys because I thought maybe if I walk down alleys, nobody will find me and I'll bleed to death. I mean, it was like a conscious thought. And I know we've all felt the pain. Pain is pain. It doesn't matter if you've never been where I've been or I've never been where you are, or where you were. When we get here, we're suffering. We're all suffering. And pain is pain. And I remember I loved getting busted towards the end because I'd go and there was an institution called Sybil Brand. It was for women, and they'd give us watered down coffee, but it was hot. It was warm to my body, and oranges and cookies and bologna sandwiches, And sometimes I hadn't eaten for days, So it was heaven. It was heaven for me. And I was 40. The first NA meeting that I ever went to was called Saturday Night Live. It was in Venice, California. It's still going on now. And I went to the meetings. It was the late 70s, and I probably was bussed in from a halfway house or something, but because I don't remember how I got there. I don't even remember what the format. I don't remember anything about the meeting except the men. And it was a big room, pretty much like this, and it was a hot meeting, hot because a lot of men went, and they stood up like those men up there, holding up the wall, and hi, and I went right up there with them, and holding up the wall, and I just stood up there, and I was just checking out all the men, And they were fine. There's some fine men. You men are fine in Narcotics Anonymous. You really are. You really are. And I love you, but you need to stay away from the women, newcomers. Oh, well, Roseanne, I was just talking to her because no women were talking to her, and I was just trying to help her out because, I really care for the newcomer, and I say, if you really care, stay away. Walk them over to a woman, introduce them to a woman, let a woman get the phone number. Anyway, that's just where I'm at. I love, and the men and the women. I've had sponsees that have gone out with newcomers, and I've told them, listen, we need to sit and talk, and maybe you need to find another sponsor because this is not okay with me. We need to give each other a break. This might be the only break any of us have, is being here this time. So anyway, so I got to recovery. So I went to the meeting, and of course I never heard anything. Just checked out the guys, and I did that for about 10 years, in and out, and halfway houses and three-quarter-way houses, and just no sponsor, no steps, nothing. So when I was 42 years old, I came in via long-term recovery house in California. Now, I am not promoting recovery houses or halfway houses or treatment centers or anything because I got it in Narcotics Anonymous, and this is where I got it. But I had to be taken off the street and put in a recovery house. So I'm in a recovery house, and I was actually there for a year and a half, and it saved my life. It helped save my life. And so I'm 42 years old, and I'm feeling like nobody's ever going to want to sponsor me. I'm too old. I know how the program works. It's not working for me. It never did. Why is it going to? My head would say, you're a piece of you-know-what. You're never going to get it. You'll never get it. Your has-been. They know who you are. Nobody wants to sponsor. On and on and on. And at that time, what happened for me is I believe that my higher power struck me stupid because I would go to meetings and they'd be talking and I would think, what are they talking about? I mean, everything, surrender to win, acceptance, and I was like, what are they talking about? Everything was so strange. And I think what happened for me is I had been manipulating that whole 10 years. I'd go to meetings. I didn't like that person. I didn't like what they wore. They couldn't tell me how to stay clean. I probably used more than they whatever. I'd spill more than they use, whatever. And consequently, I never listened. I should have really told this story at the beginning tonight. But what happened for me is I was at that recovery house. I got a sponsor because I was going to get kicked out if I didn't. And I didn't care if I left, but I didn't want them to kick me out. I'd rather have escaped through the window or something, because that's what I used to do during the night. I'd escape from programs, and, you know, because I thought they'd try to talk me into staying, so I would split during the night. But for some reason, I was really, really beat up this time, really beat up. And I had gotten a sponsor. And I had 30 days clean, and they were having an evaluation of their residents. And I just knew they were talking about me, and I knew that they were probably going to give me, create a position for me, junior probationary staff member. Because I used to sit at night after meetings and sit in the hallway and talk to all these women, and I'd tell them, get a sponsor, I'd talk to them about the steps, you know, all this stuff. And I had been counselors before. We won't even go there, but I don't even know why somebody would have had me be a counselor. But, you know, in those days, if you had a month clean, they would hire you or have you work at their treatment, their halfway house, because nobody stayed clean a week. But anyway, so these two women called me in the room, and they were going to evaluate me. And I just knew they were going to give me this job. You know, and I'd get maybe $20 a month stipend and buy some cigarettes and stuff. And so they called me in the room. And I thought, oh, here it comes, you know, gonna have a job. 30 days clean. And they said, Roseanne, we cannot get your attention. And if we can't get your attention, you're gonna go back out and you're gonna use, and you're gonna die. So we've decided, the treatment team has decided, that we're going to give you a special treatment. And this was a special treatment. I had to wear a muzzle. And I couldn't talk to anybody but the other residents. And I had to wear a sign. And the sign said, I am not a counselor, I am a resident. Talk about willing to go to any lengths. When I sponsor a newcomer, and I will say, I want you to get a woman's phone number at every meeting you go to, and always thank the speaker, and oh, I'm too afraid. You know, I tell that little story, how willing, you know, their sponsor was to, you know. So I had to do this for a week, and I thought, I can't. You know, I mean, my ego got in the way, and I thought, these women don't even know me, and they don't even have a degree. How can they tell me what to do? How do they know this will work? And, you know, my head was just out to get me. And I remember sitting there, and many months later, I look back, and in retrospect, I realized that at that point, I wanted to live more than I wanted to die. Now, I didn't know anything about willingness or honesty, open-mindedness, but looking back, I know that I wanted to live more than I wanted to die. And I looked at them, and I said, when does it start? And they said, right now. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try, but I don't think I can do it. And they put the muzzle on me, and they put the sign, and I walked out the door. And there were about 40 or 50 addicts in the house, and they couldn't talk to me or they'd get in trouble. And I remember walking out, and I remember looking in their eyes, and I remember the love and the concern and the compassion, because they couldn't say a word to me, but I really felt that they were there, like, you can do it, you can, you know, we're going to help you, you can do this. And I've been getting love from all of you ever since. You know, we don't even have to talk to each other. We don't even have to understand each other's language. It's the language of the heart. And about that time, my sponsor asked me, she said, Roseanne, what did you hear at the meeting last night? And I said, I didn't hear anything. And she said, what do you mean you didn't hear anything? Were you talking? I said, no, I wasn't talking. She said, were you sitting in the front row? I said, yes, I was sitting in the front row. I probably wasn't, but yes, I was sitting in the front row. And she said, Roseanne, if you don't hear the message of Narcotics Anonymous, you're going to go out and you're going to die. So she gave me an assignment, and the assignment was I had to sit in the front row, and I had to lean forward and look at the speaker's mouth, and this was the prayer I had to say. I said, dear higher power, please help me to hear the message of Narcotics Anonymous, because if I don't, I'm going to go out and use, and I'm going to die. And the very next meeting that I went to, it was a Sunday meeting, Sunday afternoon, and I went to the meeting, and there were some motorcycles outside, bikes, and I went into the meeting, and there was this biker dude at the podium, and he had a bunch of tattoos, and he was leathered down, and I saw him, and I said, oh, forget it, bikers don't stay clean, you know. And he was celebrating like 8 or 9 years clean, and I thought, forget it, bikers don't stay clean. And that's what I had been doing for all those years. I would go in and I would judge someone and then just shut them out of my life. And I never heard the message. And like some of you tonight may have judged me, and you know what? It's okay. We have opinions, we have judgments. I mean, people have said to me, Roseanne, they call me Susie Sunshine, the librarian, you know, all this stuff. They don't want to hear anything I have to say. And you know, and it's okay, because we do what we do as long as we do what we do until we learn what it is we need to learn. But I know for myself, this period, that period then, was a turning point in my recovery. And so I was dissing him and thought, you know, he's a biker. Bikers don't stay clean. But I sat in the front row, and I was with my buddies from the halfway house, but I didn't tell them what I was doing. And I leaned forward, and I said the prayer. And this was the very first message I ever heard in Narcotics Anonymous. This biker dude said, if you don't get on your knees in the morning and ask your higher power to help you stay clean, and get on your knees at night and thank him, you're going to go back out, you're going to use, and you're going to die. And I knew he was talking to me. And I had been in and out of the rooms for 10 years and had never, ever heard that. Never. And you know, we say it, people share it all the time, you know. And I thought, wow, that's pretty heavy, you know. And then we didn't have the basic text at the time, but we had the little white book, and I used to go in and look, and then I saw how the program works. And I heard somebody share, do you want to know how the program works? And I'm thinking, yeah, really, how does it work? And they're talking about honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And I thought, wow, who put that in there? I never saw that, you know. I wanted to know, because I thought, you know, from my little speeding days, I thought, wow, they're really cool. They're really heavy. Whoever wrote that really knows what's happening, you know, so anyway. But, so I started to listen and really listen. And I'm going to go on further into the steps. I think I'm doing pretty good. Have a little more time. But for me, my first year and a half, I would wake up in the morning, and this would say to me, you're no good, you never were, you might as well go out and use today, because you always screw up. You know, your sponsor's working with you, she's spending all their time with you, you're wasting her time, how can you do this? I'd be sitting in a meeting, and my head would say, you know what, just leave. You're wasting everybody's time. Why are you even staying in the meeting? Because you're going to use again. So I would call my sponsor, crying, and I was desperate. And I said, you know, thank you so much for sponsoring me, and I love you so much, but I don't want to waste your time because I'm going to use today. And she said, really? What makes you think you're going to use? You're working the steps, you're going to meetings, you've got a sponsor, you know, you're doing the best you can. And I said, because I've always used, and I always, you know, and she said to me, and then we had met shortly after that, and she said, Roseanne, you have a disease, and it's out to get you. And this is where it lives, right here. And it's going to tell you those things all the time. And I said, well, what do I do? What do I say? And she said, this is what you do and this is what you say. You say to your disease, thank you for sharing, but no thank you. And you put one foot in front of the other. So today, when I was taking a little nap, and I woke up, and it was like quick, I just woke up and didn't have all my faculties, and I just woke up, I had this feeling, and it was a feeling of fear, and I thought, oh, I'm going to speak tonight. What if nobody gets anything? And I said, thank you for sharing, but no thank you. You know. So it's always there. I mean, it's really there. And of course, you know, I've been around for a while and I've learned these little tricks and I've applied them all the time. So, you know, but my disease doesn't sleep. Some people say that their disease, you know, wakes up an hour before they do. My disease is always there. It just doesn't sleep. It just takes a lot of speed or something. I don't know, meth, you know, I don't know what. But it's there and I have to just be aware of it, you know. So I got this sponsor and I started working the steps, and I really was a basket case when I got here, and I'm grateful that I was, because I wasn't hip, slick, and cool anymore. You know, I was just tired. There was nothing exciting about a 42-year-old hanging out at Sherm Alley or the crack house or wherever I was. Just going to jail, getting busted, just was not glamorous anymore. It really had never been glamorous. I was a pretty serious user when I used, but. So I got this sponsor, didn't think anything would work, and she, you know, started getting me into the steps. And I remember going to her, and I said, okay, I'm ready for my first step. And she said, really, you are? She said, I said, yeah, just I'm ready for my assignment. And she said, Roseanne, I am the sponsor, and you are the sponsee. When I want to give you an assignment, I will give you the assignment, and you will do the assignment. And I said, okay. And she said, but for right now, your first step is that you don't use no matter what. And I've been no matter what not using for 27 plus years. You know, there's one step I do perfect. So if you're new tonight and you do not have a sponsor, just do not use no matter what. No matter who comes, no matter who goes. No matter if you lose a job, if you don't have any money or whatever, you just don't use no matter what. And so that was my first step, you know, then it still is. And then I said to her about my second step, you know. I said, oh, we can jump right over this step and get to the third step. And she said, I wish we had the steps up here, especially for the newcomers. But she said, I said, we can just jump over the second step. And she said, really, why? And I said, because I'm not insane. And she said, really? And I said, well, I can't be restored to sanity if I'm not insane. And she said, didn't you tell me you were in a mental institution once? And I said, but I wasn't in a straitjacket. All the buts. So she said to me, Roseanne, listen, what I want you to do is I want you to go home and I want you to write. Just write some crazy things that you did, whatever comes to your mind. And what she had me do always then, and I still do, and I do it because it works. When I pick up the pen, and I've done a lot of writing and I do a lot of writing, when I pick up the pen, I ask my higher power to please help me be thorough and honest. And then I start writing. So I went home and I said that prayer and I did my writing. And I will tell you that I talked earlier about that message that biker had about getting on your knees. I don't tell anybody how to pray. I just suggest that you pray and try to find a contact with the higher power. And a lot of that takes time and sponsorship and steps. But I don't tell anybody how to pray. I just suggest that you pray. But I get on my knees when I pray because I have gotten on my knees for a lot less. A little lull in the crowd. Okay, all right. And it's my quiet time with my higher power. You know, it's kind of like a humbling gesture, you know. And I call my higher power God. And God has done so much for me, always, always, always. And I can do at least that, you know. And I spend in the morning, when I'm on vacation, my routine changes a little, but I try to spend at least an hour in the morning when I'm home with my higher power. I do reading, I do meditation tapes, I do silent meditation, I do music, I do a lot of reading. And guided meditation tapes. And I remember when my sponsor got me into meditating, and she had suggested I meditate for 20. And by the way, she suggests, but it's a must. It's a must, you know. And I will tell you, for all of you, I'm not going to tell you where they're at. I have it written down. I don't know it by memory. But there are 48 musts in our basic text. So get the basic text, start reading it from the beginning, and highlight all of the must. There are 48 musts. There's things we must do, I must do, I had to do, I have to do. But, okay, Doug, this is where you come in. Where did I leave off? Just went blank. My mind went blank. The steps. So I went home and I wrote, thank you. And I wrote a couple of crazy things I did, and I took my second step back to my sponsor. And so this is what I wrote. And I wrote about the time I was in my early 30s. Thank you. I was in my early 30s, and I was walking the streets of Watts. And I had turned a trick the night before, and I had gotten $20. How much is that in 120? Yeah. I had gotten $20, and I took the $20, and I went to a place called Woolworths. It was a 5 and dime store. And I went there and I bought an outfit. And I bought this outfit with the $20, and I went to a gas station, put the outfit on, and threw the clothes I had on away. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, in this neighborhood that I was like a neon sign. She does not belong here. Anyway, so I'm walking, and the police pull over. And the cop gets out, and he said, "Get in the back seat of my car." And I said, "Excuse me, officer, what is your probable cause?" He said, "Get your butt in the back seat of my car." Now, I was writing this stuff down. Now, this was the outfit I had bought and I had on. I had a pair of red hot pants, and they were hot, really, really hot, short. And so I bought these red hot pants and this red turtleneck top. And I had a pair of black fishnet stockings, if you can just visualize this. And I had a pair of black plastic tie-up boots, you know. I mean, a lot of things have come back. I haven't seen these black plastic boots come back. But that was the outfit I had on. And I'm asking this officer, what is your probable cause, you know? When I think, you know, God always has been looking out for me, always. So, you know, they took me in, probably busted me. I don't even know what happened then, but that was my second step. So I showed it to my sponsor, and I said, you know what, maybe, just maybe there's some insanity there, you know. So, you know, I went on through the steps, and you know, time doesn't permit me to go through all of them, but I am going to go through some significant experiences that I have had working the steps, because I don't want to just sit here and tell you what I think they mean and stuff. You know, I want to tell you, share with you actual experiences that I had. I did my fourth step. You know, I wrote the inventory, and I was fearful when I wrote it. I felt worse than ever. I just knew once my sponsor heard all this stuff, because I knew at that point that I was going to have to be honest. There was no BSing, or I was going to die. I knew that to my innermost being. So I'd pick up the pen and I'd say this prayer, and we didn't have the step working guide. I did a chronological inventory, and I went way back. And some of the things that I wrote that I then took to my sponsor, I had given this daughter up for adoption. I felt rotten, no good as a woman, not deserving of anything. I, in the meantime, had gotten married, and I had 2 other children. I had a son, Russell, and a daughter, Shelley. And when my son was 3 and my daughter was 2, I was at my mother's, and I was really heavy into my addiction. I'd been separated from my husband. And my old man I was in New York. My old man was going to California. He had a bunch of dope in his car. And I'm sitting there at my mother's house with my two beautiful, beautiful children. And my old man's on his way with all this dope. And guess what I did? I left the kids and I went with my old man. Now, I'm not proud to share this. It does not make me feel good to share it. I feel like still a piece of you-know-what. But I know today through inventories and through writing and through some self-forgiveness that I did what I did that day because I'm an addict. I was in the throes of my disease, and that's why I did that. And there's a line in our basic text, and it's in the beginning. And I read the book, I read it when I had 6 years clean, about 6 years, and it's my favorite line of all of our literature. And at 6 years clean, I read it. And it says, I was not hopelessly bad, but I was critically ill. And I remember the day, I just have the God bumps, I just remember the day that I read that. And I had 6 years clean, and I thought, you know what? I am not a bad person. I'm sick. And when I read that, I started just a tiny bit to forgive myself and to start looking at things a different way. And I believe for all of us, I believe that for all of us, and I know I can't speak for you, but this is what I believe. I believe that we are beautiful, perfect children of a higher power. We just took a left turn or right or whatever. I don't know why I'm an addict. I don't know when I became. I don't know if I was born or what. I just know that I'm an addict, and that's all I need to know. And I also know that I was not hopelessly bad, but critically ill. Now, the things I did, were they bad? Absolutely. Absolutely they were bad. I hurt a lot of people suffered behind the disease of addiction. But I did not do those things because I was bad. And you can go on this little trip with me that I'm going to share right now. I do an H&I meeting at a women's correctional facility. It's called Purgatory. In fact, right now I want to take a second for all of us to welcome these wonderful, wonderful women to Narcotics Anonymous in any language you want to. On the count of 3, just welcome to Narcotics Anonymous. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. So what I say to them, because, they're feeling bad, they just got off the street, they left their kids, whatever the stuff we do. And I just tell them to take a minute and to close their eyes. And I asked them to think about the last time they were out there ripping and running and maybe hurting their family and hurting their kids and just making a mess, like we make messes. And I had them think about that just for a few seconds. And then I asked them to open their eyes. And I asked them to answer themselves. If you were the person then that you are today, would you do that? No. Because we're not sick, we're not living in our addiction right now. So of course we wouldn't do those things, The other thing that I like to share is, so I did my, inventory, and I wrote all these things, and I called my sponsor one day, and I was writing about my son Russell. My son Russell committed suicide when he was 18. I never got a chance to say I'm sorry, never got a chance to make amends, never got a chance to be that wonderful mother that I could have been if I were not using. And I wrote about all this. I couldn't write about it, and I went to Jody and I said, please, I don't know what to do. And she said, jump over it, because you'll get to it. We'll work at it another time. So when I did my 8th step, Russell was at the top of the list. And I took the list to my sponsor, and she said, okay, it's time now to write an inventory of Russell. And I wrote an inventory, and I wrote the day he was born and how wonderful I felt. And then I wrote the days that I was using, and he was knocking on the bathroom door, and I wouldn't answer the door for hours. You know what we do, or what I did anyway. And I wrote all those things. And I took this inventory to my sponsor, and she then had me write a letter of amends to Russell. And I wrote the letter, and I took it back to her, and this was the letter. I said, Russell, I am so sorry for all the harm I caused you and all the pain. And if I were the woman then that I am today, I would have been a wonderful mother. And I signed it, Love, Mom. And I read the letter to Jody. And after I read the letter, I got this feeling just washed over me. And I knew and know today that wherever Russell's spirit is, that he forgave me. And when that happened, I forgave myself just a tiny bit. But it was enough to get through that time without using. And that's how this program works for me. The steps, there's magic. People say, there's no magic in the steps. For me, there's magic. Things come out of the steps that I couldn't even fathom. And I have quite a memory, quite an imagination. I found God after I did my fourth and fifth step, and I know time is preventing me from going too much further, but people used to say, God's in the steps, God's in the steps, and I would say, what step? I want to get to the step. I believe for me, after I did my fourth and fifth step, I was in a meeting, they were talking about a higher power, and I was in that meeting, it wasn't like this, but in a meeting, and all of a sudden I'm listening to people, and all of a sudden a feeling just came over me. And I knew that God is. And I've never questioned him since. I have my concept, but God is a feeling. God is in your eyes. He's in your hug. He's in your love. He's in your love. He's in your smile. And, God, these things here. And then I knew God is. And I believe that it happened for me because I got all that garbage out. The garbage when we do our fourth and fifth step, I got it all out, and my understanding of my higher power was deep within me. And when I get jammed up now and have a conflict with someone and start writing in that, I'll feel close again. I'm going to tell you a little story. I have 6 minutes, and I'm going to close. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. Thank you. Before I close, I've had 2 sponsors, and I just, because they'll probably listen to the CD. I might, send them a copy, but especially now because I remembered to talk about them. They don't get the CDs if I forget to thank them. No, but I've had 2 sponsors, and they have literally taken me by the hand and walked me through this program. And I can tell you, I think I'm a wonderful sponsor. I'm there for my girls 24/7, and they have to work the steps. If they don't want to work the steps, they need to find another sponsor. I live the orange pamphlet, the sponsorship pamphlet. My job is not to take them to court, loan them money, babysit, although I've done all those things. But my job is to take them through the steps in Narcotics Anonymous. And then when they hit their 12th step, and 2 of them have just hit their 12th step, then they get a sponsee, and then they take them through the steps, and on and on and on. So that's my little thing about sponsorship. But I have had 2 wonderful, wonderful, wonderful sponsors. They are both of them. One, we're still friends today, almost 28 years later. And I have a wonderful sponsor in Florida. They're both very spiritual. We connect. They're no BS either. We get to the point right away. And if I ask for their suggestions, I take them, whether I agree with it or not. If I just say, well, just give me a little feedback, One story, true story, and I'm going to close with this. The message of Narcotics Anonymous is, what is our message? The message is that an addict, any addict in this room, can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. Our message is hope and the promise of freedom. When all is said and done, our primary purpose can only be to carry the message to the addict who still suffers, because that is all we have to give, is our message. And I'm going to tell you this story and close. When I had a year clean, I said a prayer to my higher power. I said, God, I need to feel special. Sorry for asking you for something, but I've never asked you for anything the past year. I'm just, except to stay clean, and I thanked you every night, but I need to feel special. And I said this prayer after my first year clean, and it was a couple weeks before Christmas. And I was in California, my sister was in New York, and she called me and she said, you just received a Christmas card at our brother's home. And she read me the card, and the card said, I'm taking the first step at finding you, and I need to know that you're out there somewhere. And you won't know me by name, but maybe you remember September 10th, 1956, and it was signed Love-Annette Rose. It was from the daughter that I gave up for adoption. She had found me 27 years later, and I can tell you I did nothing to make that happen, but what we're all doing. I stayed clean. I was doing this program to the best of my ability, one foot in front of the other. My sister said, how do you feel? And this is my message to you. I said all of that to say this. I felt that my higher power said to me, Roseanne, I love you. I have always loved you, and I have always been there for you. And there's a master plan, and it's perfect. And that's all you have to do is stay clean and help another addict, and I'll do the rest. Thank you so much for having me.